Marilyn Monroe was born Norma Jean Baker in Los Angeles on June 1st, 1926. Even as a baby, she was cared for by a foster family. Her mother, Gladys Baker Mortensen, initially worked for a living, but was later committed to various sanatoriums for treatment of a mental disorder and was thus unable to care for her little daughter. Her father remains unknown to this day. With the exception of 1 year, when she lived with her mother, she spent her childhood in foster families or orphanages. At age 16, she married a mechanic, James Dougherty. Dougherty signed on with the Marines shortly after their marriage and was forced to leave his young wife on her own much of the time. Marilyn was discovered as a photo model while still married to Dougherty. The photographers who booked her were immediately fascinated by her charisma. Soon afterward, she divorced Dougherty and went to Hollywood to concentrate on her modeling career. But her real dream was to become an actress. Norma Jean took acting lessons and changed her name to Marilyn Monroe. She was very ambitious. 2 men who became her lovers helped her make her dreams come true. The first was chairman of the board of 20th Century Fox, Joseph M. Schenck. He got her a 6-month contract with Columbia Pictures, but the contract was not renewed. Marilyn had to return to modeling. In 1950, only after the influential acting agent Johnny Hyde had taken control of her career, Marilyn began getting her first roles in films such as All About Eve and As Young as You Feel. But it was the 1953 film Niagara which became Marilyn's first big hit. 1953 is the year her career took off, with the films Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and How to Marry a Millionaire. Marilyn became a major star and was showered with honors. That same year, she met ex-baseball star Joe DiMaggio, whom she married a year later. The marriage, however, was doomed to failure from the honeymoon on. Marilyn made a celebrated appearance before American GIs in Korea, while Joe, who had flown with her across the Pacific, remained by himself back in Japan. Marilyn and Joe separated after barely 10 months of marriage. In 1955, Billy Wilder's comedy, The 7-Year Itch, finally made Marilyn immortal. Despite the fact that the film's shooting schedule was marked by her lack of punctuality and her notorious forgetfulness, which made the whole production a grueling experience for the entire crew. But Marilyn was unhappy despite her overwhelming success. She felt that too little demand was being made on her acting ability. She terminated her contract with 20th Century Fox and, in 1955, she started up her own production company together with the 32-year-old photographer Milton Green with the aim of producing her own films. She joined Lee Strasberg's famous acting school, the Actors Studio in New York, and there she met the playwright Arthur Miller. She married Miller 1 year later. At the end of 1955, a new contract was signed between Marilyn's production company and 20th Century Fox. This guaranteed Marilyn $100,000 for each film and allowed her extensive decision-making powers. Marilyn improved her acting ability under the tutelage of acting coach Lee Strasberg. The Strasbergs became very important people in her life. Meanwhile, Marilyn succumbed increasingly to her pill and alcohol dependency, which began while fighting her chronic insomnia. Marilyn returned to Hollywood in 1956 to work on Bus Stop, the first film under her new contract. Bus Stop became a tremendous comeback for her. The production of The Prince and the Showgirl, which began shooting in London in 1956, was chaotic. The atmosphere between Marilyn and her co-star director Laurence Olivier was strained from the outset. The finished film received terrible reviews. Following this disaster, Marilyn separated from her partner Milton Green and took a 2-year hiatus from the film business. During this time, she tried to fulfill her role as housewife at the side of her famous husband, Arthur Miller. But her lack of activity led to psychological problems, and she resumed her alcohol and pill habit. Marilyn put an end to her self-imposed hiatus in July 1958 and took over the lead role in Billy Wilder's film Some Like It Hot. The production of this film turned out to be a torture for all concerned. Scenes had to be repeated endlessly. Marilyn returned to New York with Arthur Miller and suffered a miscarriage in early December. Plagued by feelings of guilt, she became deeply depressed. Despite all these personal problems, Marilyn Monroe celebrated one of her biggest successes with Some Like It Hot, which premiered in 1959. She received the Golden Globe for Best Actress that year. Production work on Let's Make Love began in Hollywood early 1960. The director was George Cukor. Marilyn flung herself into a brief but intensive affair with the male lead, French actor Yves Montand. Her marriage to Arthur Miller was on its last legs. In July 1960, shooting began on Marilyn's last completed film, The Misfits, directed by John Huston and written by Arthur Miller. The production turned into a nightmare for everyone involved due to Marilyn's ever-worsening addiction to pills and alcohol, the extreme production conditions, and a dictatorial director. On the set, she met Clark Gable. He became a paternal friend to Marilyn in the course of the production. Gable died of a heart attack shortly after the production was completed. Marilyn returned to New York in November 1960 and was divorced from Arthur Miller on January 20, 1961. After its release in February 1961, The Misfits got poor reviews. This fact, together with Gable's sudden death, plunged Marilyn into another psychological crisis which required a stay of several weeks in a psychiatric clinic. In August, Marilyn moved back to Hollywood for good. Once there, she underwent intensive psychiatric treatment under the psychoanalyst Dr. Ralph Greenson. She had therapy sessions almost daily from that point on. During this time, she had brief affairs with Frank Sinatra and Marlon Brando, and, at a party, she met the two Kennedy brothers, Jack and Bobby, through their brother-in-law, actor Peter Lawford. Allegedly, she began a fateful affair first with John F. and later with Robert Kennedy. In January 1962, Marilyn bought a house on Helena Drive in Brentwood, a dwelling modest by Hollywood standards. Production on her last film, Something's Got to Give, began on April 23, 1962. The film was never completed. The production was overshadowed by a business crisis at 20th Century Fox. Another Fox film, Cleopatra, with Liz Taylor and Richard Burton, turned into a financial disaster. Fox was facing bankruptcy. Marilyn, by now completely addicted to alcohol and pills, was unable to follow any regular sort of work schedule. The production was delayed by her bouts of illness, which could last for days. The managers at Fox became increasingly nervous. Due to the horrendous over-expenditures on Cleopatra, the Fox management cast about desperately for a scapegoat. Following Marilyn's appearance at a birthday celebration in honor of President John F. Kennedy in Madison Square Garden, New York, she was held responsible for the entire Fox financial disaster. Although her appearance was initially approved, she was now accused of unreasonably delaying the production. The approval was withdrawn and Fox decided to fire Marilyn on June 8th. Meanwhile, a bitter power struggle had broken out within the Fox management. The earlier Fox president, Darrell F. Zanuck, who had been out of power for some time, regained his position at Fox and put Marilyn back under contract at much better conditions shortly before her death. Marilyn's relationship to the two Kennedy brothers intensified during this time. Robert Kennedy, who had been told by his brother John to end his alleged affair with Marilyn for him, began having his own passionate affair with her, if one is to believe the assertions made by several people who were close to Marilyn. If this is true, the affair then began to threaten Robert Kennedy's career as well. Possibly the Mafia, which was being put under pressure by Robert Kennedy in his position as United States Attorney General, hired detectives to spy on the couple to gain compromising information. According to this theory, Robert Kennedy's attempt to end his relationship with Marilyn led to an unexpectedly furious reaction. Marilyn refused to accept his decision. Shortly before her death, she called the Justice Department and allegedly threatened Robert Kennedy with the publication of her affairs with him and his brother. It is still unclear whether Robert Kennedy was in Los Angeles to talk with Marilyn on the day she died. On the night of August 4th, 1962, Marilyn Monroe died under mysterious circumstances of an overdose of pills at her home in Brentwood, California. She was 36 years old.